I do commend you on your openness in allowing people you've never seen before to speak. It's very similar to the Jewish tradition. You may recall that Paul and Silas or Barnabas would be invited to come forth and speak when they were visiting a synagogue they'd never been to before. So I did have to use Google to find the location this evening, but I'm glad it worked. And it was because you all had disguised the place. You changed the light post out in the parking lot, and that's just enough to just completely throw some of us off. So it is good to be back, though I will admit that being at 7,500 feet in Colorado for lengthy periods of time, it's nice and cool. Nice cool breezes and short afternoon showers. Lots of green stuff. Very, very different than here. But we're back. So I actually, if you'd like to turn your Bibles to the Psalter, Psalm 2. Actually, I looked at. I made plans to use this text, and then afterwards I started thinking, and I went, where are we in the Psalter? I was a little concerned that maybe last week or something you all did Psalm 2, and this was going to be bad. But actually it was probably the first week that I missed, which I think I missed the Wednesday before I left. So that may be why. But hopefully taking a little different tack, even if I don't, it would be at least an educational and interesting experience to compare. The comments, given that Pastor Fry and I did not discuss any of these things, there was no collusion or anything like that. But I started thinking today, it's sort of hard not to at this point in our culture and nation's history, of texts where God addresses men, and especially kings and rulers and those in positions of authority who purposefully stand against God and against His ways. And there are texts. There are numerous texts like that. There are numerous texts in the prophets where you have a specific application to Israelite kings and to the rebellion that was theirs. That's true. But when you think about the classical text, Psalm 2 is truly one of them, because you'll notice that it's not addressed specifically to the nation of Israel. It says, why are the nations in an uproar? The Gentile nations. Why are the nations in an uproar? And the people's devising a vain thing. And so you have a text here that really has direct relevance to looking into the relationship between a governmental system, between rulers and peoples who are purposefully and specifically rebelling against God's truth and God's plans, and then God's attitude toward them. And Psalm 2 addresses that, so let's read through it again. Why are the nations in an uproar and the peoples devising a vain or empty thing? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against His Mashiach, His anointed one, His Messiah, saying, let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs, the Lord scoffs at them. Then He will speak to them in His anger and terrify them in His fury, saying, but as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. I will surely tell the decree of Yahweh. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will surely give the nations as your inheritance, and the very ends of the earth as your possession. You shall break them with rod of iron. You shall shatter them with like earthenware. Now therefore, O kings, show discernment. Take warning, O judges of the earth. Worship Yahweh with reverence and rejoice with trembling. Do homage to the Son, that He not become angry and you perish in the way, and His wrath may soon be kindled. How blessed are all who take refuge in Him. Now, of course, just in these few small verses, there are a number of items that call for our attention. We're not going to be able to deal with all of them in any meaningful way. But right at the beginning, we really get an idea of the background here. You have the nations in an uproar, and the peoples, and probably peoples and nations very often in Hebrew poetry, it's a form of parallelism where you're expanding upon the meaning of something. We're primarily talking about the Gentile nations throwing off the rulership of God, and that leads us immediately, before we could even think about the kings of the earth and the rulers and stuff, they are taking counsel against Yahweh and His anointed. Now, I've said many times, I'll say it again just so you make sure to remember it. One of the most dangerous places for a Christian, spiritually speaking, is a Christian bookstore, and especially in the commentary section. And if you were to look up the various commentaries, especially more modern commentaries, but even some of the older ones, you'll be immediately faced with a number of discussions of, well, what did this phrase mean? We will be inappropriately warned against just automatically reading one particular understanding into the term, looking backwards through New Testament eyes. Yes, I understand the warning. We need to first understand what it said to its original audience and then allow for fulfillment and things like that. But some of the options, there's really only three when you think about it. One is the anointed as in the people of Israel as a whole. And there are some places in Isaiah where the people of Israel are viewed in this way, even as the servant of the Lord in some contexts. Or, more specifically, in the king of the people of Israel, because the king would be anointed, and so he would have that position of leadership. And so that's understandable on that level. And of course, you go down to... I have verse 6, but as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. He said to me, you are my son, today I have begotten you. These were often interpreted, and these are phrases used in the kingship passages in the Old Testament, kingship psalms, where the king of Israel is being described. But we know that when we look at these kingship psalms, that they are never fully fulfilled in any one king. And what's interesting is the Jewish people